Welcome into another edition of Earnshaw Radio. Nick Earnshaw, your host here today. Once again, like and subscribe on the YouTube channel at Earnshaw Radio on X, Instagram, the whole shebang. It's going to be a lot of fun. But we have a very special guest today. I'm very excited to talk to him. There's so much to get into. He is the director of sportsbook operations at Draftkings. He's the lead odds maker at Draftkings as well. Johnny Avello, absolute legend. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk everything in the sports gambling space, as well as I want to talk about your career as well.
Okay, good to be with you.
Johnny, thanks so much for joining us here on Earnshaw Radio. I first kind of want to start out and take you back a little bit to when you first got into this space. How does I want to talk about how your first initial introduction to sports betting and odds making, what was that like, and how did you start in this field?
Well, Nick, you have to go way back with me when it comes to sports gambling in general. When I was 5 years old, I was going to racetrack. When I was 14 years old, I was making bets with a bookie. So I've been in the space a long time. Now, that's the betting side. The actual operation side, I moved to Las Vegas in 79. I could deal all the table games, and that's where I started out. But then after about 4 or 5 years, I've noticed that there were race and sports books in town, and that space was more to my liking. And so then I entered that in 1984 or 5, and I've been in that area ever since. The odds making part, I'm a math guy. I've always been good in math. So, that comes easy to me. But there's a lot of feel in it also. I mean, you kind of, besides just the nuts and bolts of the number itself, you need to have some kind of a feel where the number might go. And so I've always combined those two together and been pretty successful at putting up, the initial numbers to wager on.
You've been around this space for a while. Can you talk to me about what some of your proudest moments are and what you've learned over the years from when you first started to now?
My proudest moments are probably that I really did start at the very bottom of everything that I've ever done, including, for instance, in this part of the business, before I even got to the point where I was a director and executive director and running the operations for a department, I started writing tickets. Like you go to Las Vegas and you walk up to the counter and make a wager, and the ticket writer writes you the ticket. That's where I started off on this side. And in the table games area, I started off just, dealing games at some really small places here in town, just to get my feet wet and to move up to other places where I could make a bit more money. But, for me, that's my proudest accomplishment, is that I've always done it from the bottom up. And now, I've had some help along the way. When I say that, I worked hard. People noticed me. They gave me chances and that all comes from the, put in hard work. And I think you get that in a lot of your, your ventures along the way. You'll find that if you do put the work in, people will notice. You also asked about some of things that happened along the way. Oh my God, I've never written a book, Nick, but there's just so much that's happened through the years, from, meeting so many stars and athletes and going through some things where, we had problems during the day. Some were crucial. Some were my fault. So just a long career of ups and downs, mostly ups, but I've enjoyed every bit of it.
It's so fascinating to me on how lines are set for games. And obviously we're entering into the football season. Philadelphia Eagles starting up against the Dallas Cowboys, defending champs. They won't be out there to see their banner get raised, but they're starting off the season as defending champs. Just talk to me how an initial line gets set, especially early on in the season. What are the mitigating factors that go into setting a line early on in the season?
It's pretty easy in pro football, and I say pro football because in pro football, a lot of the same players are on the team. College is a little more difficult because we've got the portal now that even makes it more difficult. But there's new players coming in, guys leaving early, guys graduating, and so there's just a lot of reading involved, and then setting a power rating, and then hoping that power rating is correct, and then making adjustments on it. In pro football, I just find this pro football is the easiest to set a number for. You take the two teams, you apply a power rating based on offensive, defensive production, some intangibles, coaching, you come up with an initial number. Then you throw the home field advantage in there, and that really varies from team to team. Some teams have close to 0. Some teams have as much as 4. And so then you come up with that number, and then you see if there's anything else you may be missing. Is there a revenge factor maybe from last year? That you can't put too much weight on that, but it certainly makes a bit of a difference. And then you put your number up and let the bettors bet into it and move it accordingly based on the money coming in.
For you, who's seeing the most action so far on Super Bowl odds this year? What are the teams looking like for DraftKings right now as you're seeing before the first game of the year during the preseason?
The Eagles and the Chiefs and the Bills have all taken their share of money, but the Lions are a team that's probably taken the largest percentage of money. Some teams that have us in some pretty big jeopardy if they get there, and we're not too worried about it. I mean, anything could happen because I've seen in my career some of the strangest things happen. Giants, Jets, Browns, those type of teams, we have big liability on them because their odds are so high. Those teams range from 200 to 400, and it doesn't take a lot of money to build up a big liability. And then there's money sprinkled throughout. The Bengals are getting some play, and some of the teams that are in Green Bay ever since the acquisition of Parsons. So there's the money's spread around, and we like it. That's the way we want to do it. We want a lot of money in this big pot, and then we pay one team at the end of the season, and hopefully that's a good team for us. And but there's certainly going to be some winners out there with the public.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about MVP early on. You don't have any data yet, right? Like there's no data on anybody yet for this season. Heading into the season, who's getting the most money so far? Who are people really putting their money down on for MVP? And what are the odds from your aspect, from your side of things, looking like heading in to the first game through the MVP?
Well, they really like Burrow so far this year, and that's understandable. You think about Burrow's season last year, it was a really good one. He could have won MVP last year. He ended up winning most outstanding comeback player. That's what he
comeback player. Yep.
So that's who they're piling on this year. Mostly in this race, it's quarterbacks. It's it is possible for like a Saquon Barkley to win it, especially with a year that he had last year. But for the most part, the quarterbacks are the ones that are throwing to the receivers, and so they get more of the attention than the receivers do when it comes to the MVP side. A guy like Hunter, he's taking money this year because –
Interesting.
Well, think about it.
Yeah.
If Hunter had a great year on both sides of the ball, which he's going to play mostly offense, and I'm sure he'll play some defense at times. But if he was the type of player where he was in for most plays on offense and defense and was great on both, and in both areas, why wouldn't a guy like that be considered for an MVP? So I understand the thought of the bettors. It's just that I don't believe that's the way he's going to be used. I think he's going to be used mostly on the offensive side.
What's it like setting odds for a guy like Jalen Hurts? You know, they go back to the running game last year, more so with Saquon Barkley. He takes a little bit of step back passing the ball because the run game was so dominant. For MVP being part of that, as well as in-game odds, what is it like setting odds for Jalen Hurts?
It's not hard. I mean, it's tough for him to win it because he doesn't put up these spectacular numbers. I got to be honest with you. Jalen Hurts out of college, I thought was an addict. I thought he was a really good college quarterback, and I thought he took it when there was a switch in quarterbacks when it was Tua T, right? And he took it and he rooted for Tua T. So I've always had a lot of respect for him. There was no sour grapes. He was all about winning. Comes to the pros, and I didn't think he would be much of a quarterback, but he's turned out to be one of the best quarterbacks for game management. He's really good at that. He uses everything around him. He doesn't force things. He lets the game come to him, and he's got some really great resources around him, and he uses those resources adequately, and that's what's made him the player he is. So I have a lot of respect for him.
Yeah, he's been fascinating to watch over here in Philadelphia and South Jersey. The discussion around him has been wild throughout the offseason ever since he won the Super Bowl with all the lists and is he elite? It's that whole discussion with Jalen. So he's been fascinating to talk about too. But you mentioned something just a couple of minutes ago saying football was the easiest. What is in your mind the hardest sport to set odds for?
Any college sport. Because of the carousel, the in and out. You think about the college basketball, the new players that are in, the guys that left, the new guys that came through the portal, the going for the NIL money. I mean, that's made it difficult, and it takes us a few weeks to get to the number. When I say the number, the power rating that we need to get to. So I will tell you that I think there's some soft spots out there in college basketball, especially, and in college football too. With so many games that we have to put up, the bettors can pick and choose the ones that they want to play. Pro football, there's a certain amount of games, a certain amount of weeks, and in college football, there's a lot of games. I mean, you look at a Saturday slate, and when we get into a point of the season where not only is there college football going, college basketball is going at the same time. But when that starts, we have a better handle on the football. If they both started at the same time, oh my God, it'd be a disaster.
It would be absolutely nuts if they were at the same time. My goodness. That's very interesting. And you mentioned college football being the hardest. Is there a sport, a game, or an event where you were like, this is the strangest thing I've ever put odds on? Like, what is the strangest one in your estimation that you've ever had to deal with? A game, an event, or a market, just in general?
Well, remember, events now, I've done a lot of entertainment events through the years, going back, over 25 years or so. And I could never take bets on them in Las Vegas. They were pretty much conversational odds and table, coffee table talk. That's it. But now we actually do put these odds up. We put up the Academy Awards. We put up the Emmys. So we're starting to, and we do the hot dog eating contest, which I've done for years.
That one's got to be easy, right? With Joey Chestnut.
Yeah.
That one's got to be pretty easy.
But those are a little difficult at times because, and the draft, the NFL draft, because these are events that are not played out on the field, but they're events that are voted on. And anytime there's something voted on, you got to handicap the people who are making the decisions, who's the winner. So that's what makes those type of events tough.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm glad you mentioned an event because DraftKings is hosting an ultimate kickoff event in the Brooklyn Bowl, 1009 Canal Street in Philadelphia. The doors are going to open at 6 o'clock. Eagles alumni, tons of them are going to be there. T.O., Nick Foles, Brent Selleck, Fletcher Cox, David Akers. There'll be a performance from Diplo. The price is free. You can visit www.DraftKingsUltimateKickoff.com to reserve tickets. That sounds like a good time. And Nick Foles is going to be there. Do you think they should retire his number?
No.
Oh, come on. I had this argument on the radio all the time, like about retiring his number. You don't think they should retire? It's the first one, Super Bowl MVP. They should put odds on the Eagles retiring his number until they do it.
Yeah. Now, maybe Saquon Barkley's jersey will be retired if he sticks around long enough. Now,
okay.
When he came out of college, I thought he was, and I'm a big Giant fan.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the greatest pick that we could get. But unfortunately, the Giants just didn't have the guy to support him. And they didn't use him correctly. And
nope.
Daniel Jones is probably not the right QB for him to have. And now he goes to the Eagles, and look at the year he had. And we have him up this year to have 1,425 yards rushing. That's a prop you can bet over under. So think about that. That's another very high accomplishment if he reaches that 1425. This guy's a great one. He really is. And true talent was finally shown here after a team got him and knew how to use him.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that rookie year was one of the best seasons I ever saw, and then he got to the Eagles, and I think that one kind of topped the rookie year with the Giants. I want to talk about, before you get out of here, the public feeling on the Phillies heading into the postseason. We're in September now. Postseason's rolling around. What's the public engagement and the feeling right now for the Phillies heading into the postseason? They lose Zach Wheeler, made a couple of deals at the deadline. What's the general feeling on them?
Well, the feeling on them is that they're good enough to get there. The problem is, they're our second choice at 6-1. But look what happened to them last year when they get there. The way that these futures probably need to be bet, and you're betting a team, is how are they playing going into the playoffs? Now, the Mets last year, and I'm also a Met fan, the Mets, are coming in with nothing to lose and red hot, and they went a very long way. So the Phillies' talent was way better than the Mets' talent was last year. And to be honest with you, I think it's better overall this year too, player for player. But Philly needs to just go in with, relatively on a, I'd call it, I don't want to say a hot streak, but going in feeling good that they can win a lot of games. But the team is capable of doing it. They really do have the bats to do it. And I think the pitching's adequate enough to do it.
Schwarber has had a really good year, and he has entered himself into the MVP discussion. I don't think he'll get it over Shohei Ohtani, but where do things stand with the odds on Kyle Schwarber as of right now?
Yeah, Ohtani is always overwhelming favorite.
Yep.
It seems like every year. The same with Judge on the others. I mean, it's these two guys, they have these dominating seasons, and they're with teams that are always winning. And so there's those guys. It just seems like it's been 5 years, but it's only been 1 or 2. But it seems like these guys are in the mix every year. But yeah. I wouldn't count them out. I mean, we got a month to go.
The problem is he had the 4 home runs the other night, and then he strikes out for 8. He has 8 strikeouts in the last 3 games. He's been ice cold since that 4 home run game. So, hey, if he were to get to 60, do you think you could see maybe the odds changing a little bit in his favor if he were to get to 60 home runs? I know it's a tall ask, but if that were to happen, do you think there'd be movement there?
Well, think about it. He's going to get 60. Ohtani's going to be there right there too. And Ohtani's going to probably have better stats in other areas. And now Ohtani's back pitching again. So he just he's loved. That's all I can tell you. He's loved.
Absolutely. 2 more before we get out of here. It's been a fun conversation already. Johnny, I appreciate it. Johnny Avello from Draftkings joining us here on the program. Just one general question. How has the industry changed with in-game betting and, with cellular devices. Since you have gotten in here with phones, you can do it right as a tap of your finger. You're part of DraftKings now. What has changed the most for you?
Well, let's go back to the retail environment, which I left in 2018, at Wynn. That was my last position. I was there for 13 years. And we used to do in-game wagering. And the way we used to do it was when there was a timeout or, a quarter ended or an inning ended, we would put up a new line. So we had about a minute or two to take some bets, and then we take it down. Proposition bets. We would put up for a game, 5-6 propositions for a game, because we didn't actually have a big staff to be able to do more than that. For NFL games on Sunday, we would have a few props up. Super Bowl would be the big deal for putting up an array of props. Now at DraftKings, first of all, we're in-game wagering. We have it on every single game. It runs the entirety of the game. The handle on it is grown just unbelievably. It's one of the top offerings we have now in sports. Everybody likes to wager on in-game wagering. The props now, I talked about putting up a small menu for NFL games. At DraftKings, we put up a Super Bowl menu for every single game, every single week. So we have the staff to do it. We have 75 or so traders, and constantly putting up more and more stuff. And like you mentioned, in digital world, it's very easy. We get it up. It's not like we have to plug it all into a LED board. It's all on our app, which is very easy to navigate. So you have all these options now, which were never available in the retail space. And so that's the biggest change in the business.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. This has been such a fun conversation. Before I get out of here, how much did the line change when Micah got traded for the Eagles and Cowboys? What was the money like after that trade? Did it change much, or was there much of a change at all on that game?
Nick, that's interesting because it didn't change much. It didn't change at all, actually. We were 7 on the game, and we may have moved it from 7 flat to maybe 7 minus 20. So we moved a little money, but we didn't move the odds. But then just a couple of days ago, there was a big plays came in on the Eagles, and we moved to 8.5. So it wasn't the Parsons trade that did it initially. It was sharper money. Now, what was that? Was that sharper money waiting? Because they thought that the Parsons trade was a big deal? I don't think so. Otherwise, they would have jumped on it earlier. I just think it was factors that they thought that, on paper, the Eagles just looked like a mismatch. And that's why it was bet. It may not turn out that way, but that's the way the initial move went as far as the sophisticated players were concerned.
Yeah, listen, Eagles open up against the Dallas Cowboys. I'll be in attendance at that ball game. It'll be a lot of fun. Johnny Avello, head oddsmaker at DraftKings. Thank you so much for sitting down, talking about your career, how the betting space works, and everything that goes along with it, as well as a little bit of Philadelphia Phillies and Eagles talk as well. Johnny, thanks so much, man.
You're welcome, Nick.